All right, we ready? All right. Hello and welcome to CellarPass TV live here from Hall Wines in St. Helena. I'm your host, Sarah Ellenman, the Vineyard Vixen, and today is a really special episode. We are talking cheese, baby, and I'm not talking Gouda or American. We're talking some really serious Italian cheeses, so we're going to be getting our taste buds ready for that. But first, what's going on in wine country? Well, if you haven't looked outside and noticed, fall officially arrived. I know I've been saying that for a few weeks, but then it turned out to be 95 degrees and sunny, so we went back to summer. But look at me, I'm all decked out in sweaters. I'm ready for fall. I hope you are too. Got a little rain last night, it was awesome. And so what better than to get out and do some fun wine events in wine country in the fall? I can't think of a better one. So this week, Thursday, October 16th, is the What series premiere at Jessup Cellars. Now this is a benefit and it's part of the Sisters Crush Breast Cancer Weekend going on in Yountville. So that one's really cool. And then Saturday, hold on to your hats. You can be hanging out at wineries doing some really cool stuff from sun up to sundown. And here it goes. You got the dog walk to the ranch and breakfast at Vieser Family in Sassoon Valley. That's a great way to start the day with your furry friend, I think so. Then you have Tedeschi Family Winery's Fall Pickup Party in Calistoga. Bubbles and Oysters at Deloche Winery in Santa Rosa. The Harvest Hounds happening here at Hall St. Helena, and that benefits the Napa Humane. 10% of all wine sales go to Napa Humane, so drink up and buy it, people. The dogs need you. An Evening Under the Stars, the autumn celebration happening at Clos Pegase Winery in Calistoga. That one sounds like a lot of fun. And then, of course, coming to the end of the summer music series at Villarcon Winery, featuring Beso Negro in Glen Ellen. That's always fun. And then if you're looking for something a little bit more low-key, there's movie night at Flora Springs The Room. And they're going to be featuring a spooky festive film this Saturday. So to get your tickets to these and more exciting events, go to CellarPass.com and check them out. So now let's get cheesy and welcome Janet Fletcher, our cheese authority, and our fabulous featured wines from Walt and Hall. Yay. Well, thank you so much for being here today, Janet.
It's my pleasure, Sarah. It's always fun to be in this kitchen. It's so
This
wonderful.
is a cool venue.
It makes me happy being here.
It's a happy spot.
Yeah.
Especially if you like to cook, because this is like a dream for a lot of people.
Yeah, and to have, the prep cooks in the back and the dishwashers in the back. That's
perfect.
Makes it even better.
It's not like at home
at
all.
Clean up after you.
That's perfect. So you have brought a very unique spread of cheeses, which is kind of a part of your series you're doing here at Hall. So can you tell me a little bit about what you got and what's going on?
Yeah, I'm calling this assortment, and I'm calling the class that we're going to do next month in November, Italy Off the Beaten Path, meaning that it's not the Italian cheeses that you know. It's Italian cheeses that people don't know and maybe should. So I brought in 5 that I think are fabulous cheeses and not well known. And in some cases they're not well known because they're very small production.
Okay.
And they, are just not in wide distribution. And in other cases I think they're new to the marketplace. There's one that really has just been coming into the Bay Area in a very recent months. So
this is exciting.
I want to introduce them to people. So that we're going to be doing next November 4th.
National Get to Know Your Cheese Day.
I had no idea.
Now you do. Now you do. So we are celebrating. Exactly. I mean, who knew? It's incredible how we find these things out. And then Todd from Hall.
Hi.
Hi. How are you down there?
I'm great.
And you have some killer wines that we're going to be sipping along with today. And we're starting with the Walt Blue Jay, which is a fan favorite. I know the bloggers back at Holmes are very excited about this.
Yeah, I think it's a extremely food friendly wine. I love Pinot Noir with a variety of foods, and
hopefully
I'm excited to try these cheeses and see what we think of the pairing as well. But it's definitely one of the favorite wines, and we have a Cabernet called 1873 from Hall. And it's definitely a bigger, richer wine than the Pinot, so hopefully some stronger flavored cheeses to go along with that Cabernet.
All right, well, so we have more cheese than wine. Let's go with the cheeses and work our way back into the wine. Sounds good.
Great.
All right, Janet, who's our contestant number 1 here?
Well, I think my strategy is always to taste from mildest to strongest, just as you would do in a wine tasting.
Okay.
You'd have the less alcoholic and move up to the more alcoholic and more intense. So that's what you do with cheese too. You start with the milder, usually the younger ones, and you work up to the more full-flavored, more mature ones. So we have our first cheese is very young. It's a It is a mixed milk cheese. It's cow, sheep, and goat all together. You don't see that very often.
The leftovers, or
No, it's just, well,
Got some.
kind of in some way, because there's a tradition for these farmers. This cheese is from northern Italy, from Piemonte. And I think in times past they would do that. Some times of the
farm
year
had a
they have
little
more
bit.
sheep, or maybe it was their own flock, but they might have more sheep milk at this time of year, more cow's milk at another time of year, so as not to waste them, they would blend them together.
Makes sense.
Now I think it's a little more formalized, but this is all three, and it's probably leaves the creamery at about 12 days old. So by the time it gets here, maybe on an airplane, it's maybe 3 weeks old or so.
It's a baby.
So it is a baby, but it's ready. It's ready for us to eat.
Okay.
This rind is what some cheese people call, in technical terms, a brainy rind, because you can
all
see,
ripply.
yeah, it's all ripply, and the
Perfect
more
for
mature
Halloween.
it gets, exactly, it starts to slump a little bit, and it starts to look a little more like a brain, or like a Shar-Pei dog. You know, that
It gets
skin,
very wrinkly.
really wrinkly, and that's a good sign. And then sometimes you can see kind of a cream line underneath, a really creamy piece right underneath, which shows this one, I would say, is still pretty young. It's got a little bit of a cream line underneath, but not that much. So it could go another week or two. Not after you cut it. After you cut it, it's not going to mature anymore. But it should be very creamy, and this little rind is so thin and delicate.
Oh, thank you.
Todd, a little bit for you.
I know
Yes.
he's very excited about this.
Okay. I'm
very
And we're
excited
gonna,
about
Todd's
this.
gonna be passing some around, so
cut a
take
piece
a
for
little
yourself,
sliver and
pass it
pass it
along.
down.
Now, the thing I like to point out about this is a lot of people think they don't like goat cheese. So this is kind of a nice way to introduce them to that, because it's muted by
Well,
the
it's not
sheep
quite
and the
goat.
cow. Yeah, it's just like maybe a third goat. And it has a lot of complexity from those three mixed milks. And what I love is you can't tease it apart. You can't say, oh yeah, I get the goat's milk, or oh yeah, I
It
get
just
the
has
sheep's
its own
milk. It's a
flavor.
beautiful blend. Usually a little kind of mushroomy, and I always like to smell first, just like you would with wine. You always swirl the wine and smell it first, and try to think about what you're smelling, and put some words to what you're smelling. And I do the same with cheese. I slow down and
Take
turn
a
on
whiff.
my senses. Yeah, and so first my eyes tell me something. My eyes tell me the piece is maybe a little bit underripe, because it doesn't have that much of the cream line, and I'm seeing it's a little bit flaky in here. I'd love to see it a little bit more creamy. So to my way of thinking, it's
Could have gone
slightly
another week or so.
underripe. Yeah.
So delicate.
Yeah, it is. It's got a delicate aroma. That's because it's young.
And I already jumped
So
ahead
do
to
you
tasting.
think that if you would leave that whole and perhaps have it in your refrigerator, then maybe that kind of flaky line will go away?
Yeah,
Or-
if you left it whole, you could possibly mature it a little bit longer, but a refrigerator is very cold. It's too cold
Yeah.
for it. And a wine cellar is a little bit too warm for it. If you can engineer something that's in between, that's about 45 to 50 degrees, that's
Gotcha.
what it would want. And humid, it wants to stay humid.
So you need a cheese locker.
Kinda, yeah. The name of
the
this
new appliance.
cheese, just for
Yes.
viewers who might want to buy it, is Rocchetta, Rocchetta. These are all Italian, if I didn't say that. And
They
so
are-
this one is from northern Italy, from Piemonte,
Beautiful.
Rocchetta.
Rocchetta.
And it's a gorgeous
Love the
thing.
name, Rocchetta.
Have you? It's,
When I have a dog again, I may name it Rocchetta.
isn't that lovely? Your name's for a cheese, Bobby. It has a real kind of cultured milk, cream cheese kind of taste to me, sour cream. You get that kind of sour cream taste.
Yeah,
It's very
really,
smooth.
really good. Janet, you're known as the cheese authority, and I love that. And so, you're not a cheesemonger, and you're not really, well, you might be a cheese scholar, but how did you get into
I call
cheese?
myself a cheese enthusiast. Some people call me Madame Fromage.
Madame Fromage, I love it.
I just have always loved cheese. In going to college, I spent a semester in France and saw really great cheese. Went to the markets
Really?
and saw. Yeah, it wasn't cheese. I didn't grow up with good cheese. I grew up with the cheese in the box.
We're talking about the Velveeta
I grew up that
and
way.
the fancy
Yeah.
cutters and, like string.
My mother did not know the string trick.
It was better. You get perfect little slices of Velveeta and it just comes right through it.
You know what else would work? And I've used this on a blue cheese.
Oh.
Dental floss.
That would work as
Yeah,
well.
not the mint.
Good
Just
call.
regular dental floss. Yeah, it'll slice right through a blue cheese. What cheese professionals use is a wire if they're going to cut. That's a device called a wire. It's a very thin, almost like a guitar string kind of thing. And they use that
Pull
to
it
cut
through.
cheese very,
Yeah, I was
very
watching
neatly.
you using yours earlier.
Yeah.
That was pretty slick.
But dental floss will work in a pinch.
Yeah. Hey.
But I just fell in love with cheese in France and came home and started making cheese part of my life and part of our table. At the end of the evening, we always have, instead of dessert, we have a piece of cheese, even if it's
Oh.
just Tuesday night, and my husband and me will have a nice piece of cheese, and it's a great excuse to have another glass of wine.
That's right.
That works.
That's really, because as you were saying, you can't really ever have the cheese and the wine out of balance. So if you end up with too much cheese, you have to open another bottle of wine. And if you end up with too much
Oh, well,
wine,
thank
you
goodness.
have to
Now I know
That's
how.
really tough.
So it has to end just right.
Right. Can't have, if you have too much cheese left over, kind of got a problem.
Yeah.
Or you make macaroni and cheese the next
There
day.
you go. There's no such thing as too much cheese.
And so, you discovered these cheeses how? I know you spent some time in France, but these are Italian.
These are all cheeses that are coming into the marketplace. They're all brought in by distributors, but they're what I would call specialty cheeses or artisan cheeses. They're made on a small scale. They're not the kind of commodity cheeses you're going to find at a supermarket.
Okay.
So I discovered them by going into cheese shops and saying what's new, what's exciting today, and I think that's a really good way to approach it, as opposed to going in with your list of what you want to buy for your dinner party. Go in and ask the
Explore a
the
little.
cheesemonger, what are you excited about today? What would you take home today?
Right.
And that's how you get the cheese that's in best condition. Cheeses are very, they have lifespans, and
I assume.
there are some times when a cheese is really at the end of its life in the case, and that's probably not the cheese that you want. So
it's good to ask.
It's good to ask, and to taste. Now I like to buy from a cheese counter where they're going to cut it to order for you and give you a taste. Yeah.
And I would
makes
say that
sense.
cheeses are seasonal as well, right?
They really
They're-
are.
Yeah.
They are. Yeah. The artisan cheeses are, because especially if you're working with sheep's milk, that's very seasonal. Sheep don't give milk all year round, whereas cows do. Goats are pretty much year-round milkers, but sheep are not.
No.
And the milk changes throughout the season. So in a commodity situation, say the kind of cheddar you find at a supermarket
Right.
or Jack, something like that, they are making it in a factory according to a recipe.
Every day.
Every day
match.
it's the same, and so they will adjust the milk a little bit every day. If they have to add some protein to it or skim some cream off of it, they do it so that the milk is the same every day. An artisan cheesemaker doesn't do that. An artisan cheesemaker takes the milk as it comes in and has to adjust the recipe, has to adjust the process a little bit every day. So that's really the artistry of an artisan cheesemaker, is adapting to the milk.
It's really cool.
What
makes
do you
it
think
more special?
wine-wise? Did you think about what wine might go with that?
Something. I think the Pinot is fine. I think the kind of combination of the sheep, the goat's milk, and the cow's milk makes it really interesting. So I'm thinking more white wine.
I was thinking like a nice Chardonnay.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
Because of that almost cream cheese texture.
Yeah.
And you get that little bit of sourness from the goat's milk. So I always find goat's milk and maybe Sauvignon Blanc or Chardonnay, or since we're talking Italian cheeses, I mean, there's so many different Italian white wines out there that
Pinot
perhaps something like
Grigio.
that would work.
Yeah, it's a young, fresh cheese, and it needs a wine, I think, that's kind of young and fresh.
Or
and-
sparkling. When in
yes.
doubt, go for the bubbles.
I like the
Just
way you
saying.
think. And the other good thing about sparkling wine with a cheese like this is it really cleanses your palate. This was a
Exactly.
very creamy palate coating cheese.
Exactly, and you would
So-
want that balance for sure. I would do bubbles with that.
Bubbles with anything.
That's what I say.
Yeah.
It makes it really easy. Red, white, I know bubbles. Okay, there it is, all done. So much fun. All right, so we have gone through the creamy deliciousness.
Yeah, and now we're really taking a jump into firmer cheeses.
Firmer cheese.
That's just
And you've
kinda
got a
what I came up with.
beautiful arrangement here. And I'm telling you, when I put cheese out, it does not look this good. So are there some secrets to like presenting cheese to make it look beautiful like this? Or you just got thrown on a plate and say good luck and you just have magic behind you.
Well, you try to buy cheeses in good condition to begin with, and then I think you need to bring it to room temperature, because cheese tastes best when it's at room temperature. I think it's nice to have a variety of boards or surfaces to put cheese on if you're going to present it as a platter. Even like going to a one of these scrap marble places and getting some pieces of marble or slate. A piece of slate to put your cheese on would be fun. When I go to secondhand stores and look for old boards and things that have some character to them, and those are fun to use to display your cheeses on. I always like to have a nice size piece. So even if it's just 4 people at the table, I might buy a little extra so I have a nice looking wedge. I leave the rinds on. You can see I left all the rinds on because the rind is part of the beauty of the cheese, and the cheesemaker worked very hard to get the rind. We have 5 cheeses here, and we have 5 different kinds of rinds, which we can talk about, but that's partly what makes it so beautiful.
It is very gorgeous. I love the color assortment happening here. The textures are all different. It's really appealing yet so simple.
Yeah, I like to have different textures. I like to have soft and hard, creamy and firm. I like to have cow, goat, and sheep, young and old. Diversity is really, I would say, the key to a beautiful cheese platter. On the other hand, you know how wine people will sit down and have a Pinot Noir tasting, and they'll taste Pinots from Carneros versus the Anderson Valley versus Burgundy. I think you can do that with cheese too. You can have a cheddar tasting, for example, where you would have an English cheddar and an America, Vermont, and a California, and kind of you've got the same cheese but from different places. So
that'd be fun.
It's
too.
Absolutely,
because you can get those different flavors, the profiles, the aging processes. Some are aged. I was just looking at your newsletter that was talking about the aged cheddar from Canada.
Oh, yeah, 7 years old.
Yeah, that's way cool. So there's so many, just like wines, there's so many different cheeses, so many different styles of the same cheese. So, if you like wine, like to explore wine, you might like to explore cheese just as much. Mm-hmm. And I do have some feedback coming in from the rockstar bloggers out there. And we've got Maxine in a Fabulous World saying, I love discovering new cheeses, always so much fun to eat. And we have a question. Could you please give us some tips for storing cheese and temperatures?
Absolutely. It's a great question. These are expensive cheeses, I have to say. Cheese has gotten very expensive. And when I give a dinner party, have people over, the cheese course is the most expensive part of the experience, more than the meat. So you don't want to waste it. You really want to care for it as best you can so that you don't waste a crumb. And what I like to do is, first of all, when I get it home, if it's wrapped in plastic, I take it out of the plastic because the plastic smothers it. And a lot of stores these days use plastic for convenience, and so you can see the cheese, but it's really not good for the cheese. So get it off the cheese, and then I rewrap it in something that's more breathable, like wax paper or parchment. Some stores sell this cheese paper now that's got a coating. Yeah, that's the best. It's nice and flexible, and it allows the cheese to breathe. But wax paper works just fine. And then, so I wrap it up in that, and then I put it in a lidded container like a Tupperware. And it'll last much longer that way. Every time you take, say you take this piece out and you only eat half of it, rewrap it, put a fresh wrap on it. Don't use your old wraps. Yeah. And that you'll keep mold down, you'll keep spoilage down.
Good to know. Well, that's a good tip. And and we're so fortunate being in Napa Valley, we have access to a lot of the specialty papers and stuff. Like almost every store I go to has parchment paper, which in parts of the country is like, what? So knowing that wax paper works just fine, that's pretty readily available. Yeah, or
butcher paper. You just don't want to use plastic. I don't really like to use foil because I don't like the aluminum coming in contact with the cheese. And then I also it's a little too tight of a wrap for the cheese, but something like wax paper is ideal. You don't need to spend a lot of money on it.
Excellent. Spend money on the cheese, not the wrap.
Absolutely.
Let's see what else we got coming in here from the bloggers. Can't we just pair some of these cheeses with the great wines? Yes. Any good ground rules you can recommend for pairing red wines and cheese?
Well, Todd probably has some ideas on this, but my thoughts are when you get to red wine, you're getting to tannin. Varying degrees of tannin. We've got a Pinot Noir here that doesn't have as much, and we've got a Cab that's going to have a lot of structure and weight and intensity. And so you want to line your cheeses up with the intensity of the wine. So if you imagine your wine kind of on a spectrum from a little delicate Chenin Blanc up to a big, robust Napa Valley Cabernet. you want to pair it with cheeses that kind of cover that spectrum too. So with the delicate wines, we want delicate cheeses, fresh and young and simple. And then as we get up to complex, intense, robust reds, we can get into more aged cheeses.
Deeper
because with
flavors.
age, cheeses get more complex, they get more intense because they've lost moisture,
Right.
they develop more aroma, everything comes up in them.
So having a wine that balances
you need
that
a
out.
wine
Yeah, they should
that
complement each
matches it.
other.
Makes
You
sense.
should be able to taste the wine and taste the cheese, and
So it's not too complex at all. You just kind of use the cheese as the guide and be like, oh, you're kind of mild, so
Yeah.
we're going
You know
to keep
the
you
flavor
over
profile.
with the whites for a while. And if you're getting blues that have a lot of flavor, I know red wines are great with those. And I'm a huge fan of aged cheeses, so that's always just pretty much par for the course at our home.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about, they find white wine more compatible with cheese almost across the board. My problem with that is that I have cheese at the end of the meal after the main course, and I don't want to go back to white after I've had a red with the main course. Usually, my palate doesn't want to go back to white, so I'm usually going to stay with the red with the cheese platter. Now, individual cheeses, it's different. You hit on one great match. To have creamy cheeses with bubbly is
Yep.
really very pleasing. I would say
works
some
well.
matches that don't work: blue cheese and strong blue cheese and red wine. Even though there you have an intense cheese and an intense wine, it's a real clash. Yeah, the mold in the blue really it takes all the
things
fruit
like that,
out of
really.
the out
I
of the
think there's
red.
some misconceptions out there about cheese and wine pairings. Everybody just thinks, oh gosh, it's cheese that goes with any wine, and that's certainly not true. I think that generally speaking, at least in this area, in the places that you shop, if customers go into those cheese shops, they can just ask that cheesemonger, I'm having a dinner party that's featuring this wine, and this wine. Give me 3 cheeses that are going to complement these wines, and I'm pretty sure that they're going to have some great cheeses and great suggestions. I mean, that's just they're so into cheese that they're
That's their thing. And I always say sometimes take a chance, because you fall into your ruts, just like with your wine, you have your go-to wines, and you probably, whether you admit it or not, you have your go-to cheeses, like what your comfort zone is. And so I would say if you are having a dinner party, work with the cheesemonger, get a surprise cheese, something that you haven't really heard of before, and make it exciting, because it's fun, and maybe you win one, maybe it wasn't so great, but at least you tried.
Absolutely, I totally endorse that approach. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this class on, the off the beaten path, because people don't. They get so comfortable with what they know, whether we're talking wine or food or fruits and vegetables.
Right.
They buy the same thing again and again. And I see it when I go to a cheese counter and I watch the people next to me and they're buying what they know. I always try to buy something I haven't had before. And these days, every time you go, there's something new at the cheese
Like,
counter.
I haven't seen that. I will take some.
Well, this one is the, if we were going to go in order of strength,
Okay.
I would say this one is probably next. Really unusual cheese. It's a square, which you don't see very often, and it's about that high. It's a really unusual shape, and you can see, look at this rind. It's really kind of prehistoric. It's got a lot of
Really cool.
a lot of cool stuff going on that rind. A lot of gray mold and white mold and some golden brown molds. So this is what I would call a natural rinded cheese. It just happens, these molds. And this is, it looks like it's a goat cheese because it's so pale. It's actually cow's milk cheese, also from Lombardy, from northern Italy. Very unusual texture on this cheese. It's kind of crumbly. It reminds me a lot of an English cheese called Caerphilly, but I don't know any other cheese like it in Italy or the U.S. for that matter. So,
And our lovely studio audience, Chef Todd is bringing you some selections. And if you have any questions, feel free to shout out. You're a part of this too. And we want to hear your feedback.
okay. This cheese is called Salva, S like Sam, A-L-V-A, Salva Cremasco. And the reason it's called that, Salva comes from the Italian salvare, to save. And and Cremasco comes from crema, which is not, in this case, crema is the name of the town where it's made, or near Crema. People think that it's called Salva because it was initially made in like on the farm when the farmer had too much milk.
Oh.
So maybe it was a farm that just sold, had one cow and just had enough milk for the family, but at certain times of the year the cow gave so much milk that there was extra. So they would make a cheese like this to save the milk.
Okay, yeah, not wasting, right.
Yeah, not waste it. So it's called Salva Cremasco, and
Sniffing.
this one too, if it gets a little more mature, it's going to get more runny under the rind, like our first one. So similar in that respect, but much drier than that first cheese.
Yeah, it's really good.
Brittle. Really brittle. You can break it. That first one you couldn't break like that.
No.
So that tells me I see that tells me this is going to be a high acid cheese.
Oh.
Low pH, high acid when it's brittle like that.
Good to know. Wow. Definitely more of a flavor in this one than the first delicateness that we sampled. That is good.
More cave kind of taste.
Very earthy.
Yeah, earthy for sure. And
I
you
love
get that
the
acidity.
rind. I mean, we're heading towards Halloween. I mean, come on.
That's scary.
It is
It's
scary
spooky.
looking. It is spooky. It's great. I love it.
I actually wouldn't eat this rind. This first one I would eat. This one I probably wouldn't, although it wouldn't hurt you. But it's not going to be tasty. I go right up to it though, because that's where it's going to be a little bit creamy and it's going to be the strongest. You're going to have most of the kind of mushroom notes right up there under the rind. So a lot drier, more intense. I get more mushroomy notes right under the rind, mushroom and nuts.
And you're right. It reminds you of a barrel cave. Mm-hmm. It is kind of musty.
Yeah, it's like, love it. What do we think, guys? So far out of the two, you have a favorite or a tie or what?
I love the blue jay.
The blue jay's getting the
She's
vote.
stuck on the wine.
Yes. Enough about the cheese. Let's talk about the wine. And we
Think
should
about
talk
the
about
finish.
the wine. The finish is
Everything
beautiful.
when you taste cheese, it's just like tasting wine. All the same senses come into play, and some of the same features. So when I taste a cheese like this, and I swallow it, and then a little bit later, I still taste it. It's still there. It's a really long finish, like you have with really good wine. So it's just kind of blossoming in my mouth.
That's beautiful.
I think it's more receptive to this wine. This wine is so fruity, so it kind of balances
This
out.
one
that
Are you
definitely
on the
works.
Pinot or the?
earthiness. Yeah.
And blue jay's, not
You had
too
it with the
strong.
cow?
I heard the cow,
good.
the earthiness of
I haven't even tried it.
Oh, well, look at you, overachiever. No, that's great. And it's fun. Again, try the different wines, try the different cheeses, mix it up, find what you like, find what you don't like. That's really important, actually.
At the end of the day, it's
Yeah.
if the cheese is good and the wine is good.
Exactly. So let's talk a little bit about the Blue Jay. So I know we're all sipping it here, and it's delightful. But from where does it hail?
It hails from Anderson Valley. So our Walt brand encompasses 2 Chardonnays and quite a few different Pinots, upwards of 12 different Pinots. We make 2 different what we consider appellation blends. One is the Blue Jay from a few different vineyards up in Anderson Valley, and then we make one from the Sonoma County. And then we make a slew of single vineyards from all up and down the Pacific coast.
Yes, you can sip slow from the west, all the way down the west coast.
So,
It's fun. Well, it is. It's fun. All the way
from
Washington down to
actually Oregon.
Down. Yeah, you had me too. Yeah, we're both messing each other up. Okay, Oregon down to Santa Barbara.
Hills, yeah. So
You're never too far from a good glass.
Exactly. I think all of the Pinots that we make, they're all so different. That's what's really unique about Pinot. Is it's a sensitive varietal that really takes on the characteristic of where it's growing. So if you were to line up all of the different Pinots that we make, they're all going to taste different. Even the most amateur wine drinker that would say I wouldn't be able to tell the difference would definitely be able to tell the difference.
Absolutely.
In all the Pinots that we make. So I'm a huge fan of our Walt Pinots.
They're super fun.
I could go on and on.
What's the price point on this one?
This is $40. So the 2,
Deal.
what we call those appellation blends are $40, and then the single vineyards that we make are $65. So really great price points. And this is not a humongous production. It's about 1,500 cases. So
Okay, so relatively small.
We do distribute this, but again, 1,500 cases isn't that much. So it's
No,
not
so
gonna
if you
go
find
out.
it, grab it. For $40, this is a very elegant wine. I think it has a great expression of the fruit. But what's really fun is you're talking about all the Pinots that Walt produces. So it's a lot of fun. You can go to Walt's tasting room over on the Sonoma Square, And if you love Pinot Noirs, it's your, like your one-stop shop. You don't have to go any further, and you have the collection and can try all of the wines. You're in California, but you're sipping Oregon Pinots, and that is really exciting. Especially, I do love Pinot, so I do get a kick out of visiting Walt every once in a while. I'm like, okay, let's try some different ones. And I have yet to try all of them. I hold back every time. So one day I will complete the circle. But
Yeah, and there's new releases, throughout the year, so definitely check us out.
exactly.
And they're beautiful. I love these Pinots with what I call bloomy rind cheeses, like Bries or Camemberts. This also is a bloomy rind style. The white rinded cheeses, especially the cow's milk ones that get mushroom aromas as they mature, they're beautiful with Pinots.
Absolutely.
So America makes a lot of these Brie and Camembert style cheeses.
They're really good.
This cheese, when you get right next to the rind you were talking about, is like a different cheese.
Yes.
It's phenomenal, the change.
Yeah.
You have to get right up next to it.
I agree, and if it were even more mature, there would be more of a difference. You'd have more creaminess under the rind, and it'll always remain a little firm and chalky at the center.
But it's still creamy.
Uh-huh.
Right next to the rind.
Yeah, it is. It's fun to have a cheese that gives you two different experiences.
Without being smelly.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
No smelly cheese.
It's a really unusual
cheese.
one.
This isn't it.
Yeah.
Definitely getting some
unusual piece of
feedback.
cheese.
Love the Blue Jay Pinot Noir, dark and lovely, slight black tea notes on it as well, coming from Cellar Mistress. And we have, I've already got storing suggestions. Yes, an elegant expression of California Pinot. Love the spice, and it's captivating. So that's coming in from Fabulous World. Yes,
It's a good
$40 is a bargain for this Pinot Noir. And yes, we do live in wine country. It's called country for a reason, so there are lives. They are here. And then there was one other question if these rinds are edible, and you were mentioning like this one definitely, this one you could eat, but you wouldn't really want to.
I would say they're all edible in the sense that there's nothing on them that's going to hurt you, but some of them are not very tasty. I always, unless it's a super hard rind, I give it a try. And if I like it and feel like it enhances the cheese, then I
with
eat
it.
it. And if not, it's perfectly acceptable to just cut it away.
I did one because I usually never eat the rinds, and it was a really awkward experience. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go for it. Oh my gosh, now that came out so fast. I was like, oh no, that was a bad idea.
Sometimes they're ammoniated or they're just
Something treated.
sometimes they have a coating on them, like what they call cheese paint, which is food grade but not something
it's
you
not,
really want to eat.
It wasn't hot.
But I would like on these. I would eat that, and maybe not the other three.
No.
Did you put them in soups? They always talk about Parmesan
The rind,
cheese. The rind
yeah,
soups,
for
but-
sure.
Or risotto.
Well, not these. They're too
outside
moldy. No, they're too moldy. I wouldn't. And this one is very special. Shall we talk about that
Let's
one?
talk about this one that's very green.
Yeah, this is, I just discovered this cheese. Now, we had a mixed milk cheese, we had a cow's milk cheese. This is a pecorino, which means
Really?
it's sheep milk, from Italy.
Is that what that means?
Pecora is sheep, the word for sheep. So
Now
anything
I
that's
know.
pecorino isn't sheep's milk cheese.
Good to know.
And a lot of people think pecorinos are just the cheese that you grate on pasta, but anything made with sheep's milk is legitimately a pecorino. So we have a pecorino here. It's called pecorino alla canapa, and canapa is the Italian word.
For cannabis.
Yeah, this is hemp. This is hemp.
I love Latin, it's fun.
Yeah. Aren't you glad you studied Latin in 6th grade? So you knew that we have a little hemp on the outside of here.
It's
and
really cool looking.
It is fabulous, and so it's such an example of the cheesemaker's creativity. Now, the story I heard, this cheesemaker also makes this cheese, which has a different story, a different coating, but I thought they'd be fun to try together. And historically, this cheese is from around Modena, Emilia-Romagna area, like where balsamic vinegar comes from. It was common for women, who were usually the cheesemakers, even today, but especially in times past on the farm. The men took care of the livestock, and the women made the cheese. And
Interesting.
kept the men out of the creamery because they had dirty boots on,
Like,
just stay out. The cheese making's for the women. And women would sometimes at Christmas time or at Easter to earn a little pocket money, they would take some of the cheeses and dress them up and give them a special herb treatment or spice treatment and
Make them pretty.
make them pretty and take them to the farmer's market, get a little extra money, hide it from their husband. and in time for Christmas. So that's what these two cheeses both have different coatings. They're from the same producer, and it's in that tradition. So I don't know if we're going to taste much of the hemp, but I always feel like sheep's milk cheeses, not always, but often, they have this a little bit of a greenish cast to them. You see, it's kind of ivory, but also just a little hint
little green.
of greenness. And here, I don't really think you want to eat the rind. It's just going to be pretty hard. But
I think it'd be really
you just
chewy. While Jen's cutting up the little slices over here, Todd, can you share with us how Blue Jay got its name, Blue Jay?
Oh my goodness. Well, to keep the story somewhat shorter, so the Halls decided to kind of undertake starting a new brand a couple years ago, and they bought an existing brand that was based in Sonoma. And they made a slew of Pinots, and the Blue Jay was basically one of their most popular wines.
Okay.
And it was out there in the marketplace. It was the most popular wine that they made. So when we bought the brand, we just basically decided to continue making that wine under the same name. So we could just kind of keep that brand rolling.
Makes sense.
People, I think, knew what Blue Jay was. They didn't know what Walt was when we first launched it. So it helped with the launch of the brand. And, it continues to be a killer wine.
It is a delicious wine, absolutely. Question coming in from Dizel at My Vine Spot. He's asking, can you draw any conclusions about the freshness of a cheese from inspecting and smelling it?
Yes. Well, freshness, maybe by freshness you mean maturity or degree of ripeness, or you can certainly tell. Like if I looked at this cheese, even before it was cut, and I saw some browning on the outside or it's starting to sag out around here, I would know this cheese was nearing the end of its life. It was quite mature. If I had the opportunity to take a little tissue and probe it, and I saw that it was softer, I'd know that it was breaking down under the rind. It was getting nice and creamy. I like that, but I don't want it, mushy. But
right.
you want it should be like a ripe peach almost. If I saw a cheese like this one, which we haven't tasted yet, but if it had a whole lot of this gray mold all over it, we're just getting a little bit here, but if before it was cut I saw a whole lot of gray mold, I'd know that was a cheese that had been matured for a long time, and it would certainly not be fresh. Now, perhaps what the questioner is asking is, say you're at the store and you see a piece of cheese like this and it's wrapped up in plastic. Can you look at it and tell anything about how long it's been in that plastic, how fresh, how freshly cut it is? Yeah, if it's starting to sweat, sometimes you pick up a piece of cheese in plastic and you see it's kind of sweaty underneath.
Yeah.
Or it's kind of sticky. Yeah. It's been in the plastic too long. Or you can see discoloration on that cut surface. Leave it behind. I also often look at the wrap date if it's on the package, because a lot of markets will tell you what date they wrapped it on. If it was more than a day or two, I don't want it. I'll ask for a freshly cut piece, or I'll just leave it behind.
Got it.
So yeah, it's a good question.
Absolutely, and as you mentioned earlier, truly just one of the best things to do is sample. Go to a cheese shop or a counter that will cut to order so that you can sample a slice and see if that's really the cheese that you want. Even if it's a tried and true love, it might not be exactly at its prime for you. So it's a really great way to do it. Especially saying your cheese is so expensive. You don't want to spend $15 on a little piece of cheese if only that little, and find out that it wasn't quite where you expected it to be.
They're not the same all the time. That's the beauty of these cheeses, and it's the challenge of them. If you're buying the cheese in the box, it's the same day in, day out, 365 days a year.
I'm not even sure it qualifies as cheese.
It's not. It's a cheese spread or something. But even, a commodity cheddar or a piece of Monterey Jack, it's going to be the same all the time. But these cheeses vary. Each wheel is different, and always ask to taste.
Absolutely.
If you can.
Well, you're saying they are artisans, so just like an artisan wine in small batches, those wines vary every year.
Yeah.
And these cheeses are going to vary every time they make them, so you should probably sample it, even if it's one that you say, I loved it, and it's probably just as delicious, but there's going to be some variances, so check it out. That's, again, that's the fun and excitement of it all.
What'd you think about it? Did you try this one? This is
I
the
haven't
sheep's
tried
milk.
the
This is
Pecorino.
aged quite a bit more than the cheese we had before. This is probably a 3 or 4 month old cheese.
Oh, that's cool.
It's dryish, lemony. I find kind of bright acidity.
So Cellar Mistress is asking, what causes the darker layer next to the rind?
This is where it's
Kind of right, yeah.
closest
This
to
one's
air.
a good example.
Yeah, this is a good example. As these cheeses sit in a cellar aging, they're drying out, and moisture is evaporating from the surface. So this is the part that's going to dry out first. I never like to see a whole lot of that darkening because it's probably not going to be that tasty. You're going to end up cutting it away, and it usually indicates that the wheel was aged in too warm a room. This is acceptable. Certainly to me, this is acceptable. I really like seeing this one. There's almost none, but it's drying out from aging. And wow, that was tasty. Kind of lamb choppy. You get a little, it's sheep's milk. Yeah, it's a little gamey.
No, it's really bright. You just kind of like, wow, it just wakes up your palate. And
still
I
have to get the
definitely
tartness.
went with the cab on that one.
Finished it.
Yeah, it's just like you would have a lamb chop with Cabernet. I think you want a big red wine
Yeah, it's
with
like,
this.
oh, yes.
Even maybe a Syrah.
That's what I was thinking
that would
initially.
be
Actually,
beautiful.
yeah, something more. Well, I always describe Syrah as gamey.
Yeah.
So
I know.
that's
I love
that's
one of my
exactly what I
favorite
thought.
pairings of all time is gumbo and Syrah.
Oh, nice.
Hey, how'd we get from cheese to gumbo?
I know, we just went there. That's how.
So this is
If you taste both wines with the cheese, though, the Pecorino is awesome with the Pinot,
Oh, yeah.
and it falls flat with the cab.
The cab.
Or the cab falls flat with the Pecorino.
It's almost overpowering. And
Yeah.
I do
It's
find.
just the delicacy of the Pecorino gets lost.
Are you getting any of their herbaceousness from
Well,
the
not
rind?
as much as that lemony sort of delicacy that I get the Pecorino, which the delicacy of the Pinot comes
Yeah,
through.
okay.
Whereas the cab and the Pecorino just fight each other.
And I think like with the sheep's milk and pecorino, it's so grassy in note anyway. The hemp coating maybe is just more decorative than it is adding to it. It's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah, I feel like I get a little herbaceousness, at least in the nose.
yeah.
It's coming from
This is a
that.
This is a pretty big Cabernet, so something a little bit lighter, like Syrah. Syrah I think would just be great. We make a Syrah here, so.
Well, let's try a cheese that I think might really go well with the
Excellent.
This is our other Pecorino from the same producer, but a different treatment on the rind. Any guesses? Any guesses? Remember, I told you it was from Emilia-Romagna. It's balsamic.
It's balsamic.
It's balsamic and juniper berries.
Oh, fun.
And I think you'll smell. My guess is that you're going to smell a little hint of juniper, and not too much of the balsamic. Let me just give it a little bit of sweetness. So this is Pecorino alla Canapa, and this is Pecorino Ginepro, or the juniper berry Pecorino. A little different color too, though, much more ivory, kind of butter colored, but again, just 100% sheep's milk.
Are they the same age?
Well, I don't have any way of knowing for sure, but I would guess that this is a little bit more mature just from eyeballing it, and this is a smaller wheel, so it's going to age faster. But they're both, I would say, you're about in the 4 month. This one probably can go out to 6 months. This,
Even though that one has very little of the discoloration.
yeah, it just has a lot to do with how warm the aging cellar was, and but yeah, it does not have very much darkening at the rind, which is nice. And but you can tell just from me cutting it that it's firm.
Definitely.
And
It's definitely got some texture to it.
yeah, I
not a soggy
love it.
cheese.
It is divine, and I think it's a great red wine cheese. When you have a red wine that you want to show off, like a more mature wine, I think it's a good choice.
You know, it's funny is when it's side by side with the first Pecorino, it's almost, you can almost not tell the difference.
Yeah, though you can really see it
But you
here. That's
hear it,
funny.
yeah.
So much paler, this one.
Absolutely. All right, so going on to this little beauty, and Todd, I'm going to move over to the Cabernet.
Sounds great.
So tell us about it's the 1873. Right?
Yeah, so 1873 is somewhat of a new wine. This is only the second vintage. It's called 1873 because it's honoring the heritage of this particular property. It's when this property actually got going. So this property has been really up and running more or less since then. They had some trouble with phylloxera back in the late 1800s. So again, kind of honoring this property's heritage, but it comes from a variety of vineyards. Not just vineyards that we own, but vineyards that we purchase from.
Okay.
So it's really showcasing some of these prized vineyards that we buy from, and then the property right here as well.
Excellent. And what's the price point on this particular?
This is $80, and this is part of what we call our artisan collection of wines.
So you have the beautiful artwork
So
on the
really
front.
great artwork on the front. A wine that you can only find here at the winery or through our wine club.
Wonderful.
Is it all cab?
There's just a tiny bit of Merlot. Yeah.
That to me is a really nice cheese wine, and perfect with this Pecorino. That's so mouth-filling, dry, crumbly, lammy, lemony. Very similar to the other one, but without that herbaceousness.
Kind of fruity. We're up for that.
Pardon me?
We haven't gotten it.
Where did that cheese? Yes, it was. They were all cut. It's the one. They were all cut up. Oh, maybe not.
You're not.
But we can. We certainly can.
But hang tight. We'll be around in just a moment.
It's pretty.
Let's. If you want to pass. I put it on another plate. I thought, but maybe not. Okay.
It's all right. So, loving Janet Fletcher's
way.
cheese lesson, and in fact, this world's totally digging the discussions. And you know, you have your book. You do a lot of things. You're a woman of many talents.
Well, thank you. I write a lot about cheese. I love to teach about cheese. I love this class series we've been doing at Hall.
Is your bed a cheese wheel? Come on.
Aw, what a great idea! I love it. I don't know if my husband would love it. I do. And I launched about 6 months ago a new project called Planet Cheese. Someone just the other day gave me the great tagline for it. She said, "Planet Cheese, that's where I want to live."
That is
so that's my new
fantastic.
tagline, where you want to live.
Planet Cheese, what's your
Planet Cheese is
newsletter?
an email newsletter. It comes once a week in your inbox. It's
Excellent.
complimentary.
It's called your cheese hotline.
It's just my way of sharing what I love. So new discoveries, new cheeses, recipes with cheese, new shops, people in cheese, issues, some of the maybe legal issues that arise around cheese, what consumers need to know.
There are legal issues with cheese?
Oh yeah. It's unlike
It's
wine,
nothing, just-
which can't kill you. Cheese can kill you,
Oh.
So it is regulated, and some would say over-regulated. But
Got it. Well, that's good. So, yeah, if you're totally into cheese or really loving what you're watching today, definitely check out Janet
Yeah, they should
Fletcher's.
just look on my website, janetfletcher.com, and they'll see how to sign up. It's free. You can unsubscribe anytime or subscribe anytime.
Excellent. Yeah, I was just reading one of the recent issues. It's really cool. It's really enlightening to kind of see your take on what got you excited. It's
Yeah.
like, and do you have a set program where you're just kind of coming up with
No,
something? that's
just
really-
whatever catches
Stir
my
you?
my fancy, like that 7-year cheddar I stumbled on. I thought, gosh, my readers would love to know about that.
Absolutely.
I did the one that's coming up next week is recipe based. It's my husband's taking up bread baking, and he came up with this Danish rye bread, and I wanted a cheese spread to go with his Danish rye. So that's what's coming up next week. This really tasty cheese spread that I created.
Very
So-
cool. Very cool.
Well, we have one more cheese. Do we have time to taste
Oh,
it?
we do, absolutely. Got some more feedback coming in from our bloggers
Okay.
out there. And how did you discover William Peterson, and are his descendants active in the wine industry?
Not that I'm aware of.
All right.
He was not here for very long, and he sold the property to a gentleman named Robert Bergfeld. So we honor Robert Bergfeld by making a wine from this vineyard that we call the Bergfeld Vineyard. But as far as Peterson goes, I have no clue if his family is involved in the business.
All right, and then we have the 1873 Cabernet made my Snooth Wine of the Month,
Oh,
coming
awesome.
from Vine Spot. Well,
Very cool.
congratulations, absolutely. It's really cool. Cheers to you, Giselle. It's awesome. All right, more feedback coming in, and oh, so our mistress is saying, "Whoops, I got a different wine. I've got Jack's in my hand. Lucky girl." How would this particular wine that we're sipping, the 1873, differ from Jack's?
The Jack's is a little bit bigger, has a little bit more tannin. It's certainly a little bit more age-worthy. Diamond Mountain we source a vineyard from Diamond Mountain, so that's kind of the core of the Jack's masterpiece. So it's just a little bit darker fruit. May overpower this cheese. I mean, the cheese is awesome, so it would probably do fine with this cheese as well. But the wine's just a little bit bigger.
Yeah, and it's delicious. So congratulations to you on that one. It's really good. All right, and we are
Okay, yeah,
Last,
so we have-
last but not least.
Yeah, and we have 5 little-known Italian cheeses here. On November 4th at Hall, we're going to have 7, no repeats. So 7
all
totally
new.
different ones that I've chosen.
It's
So,
exciting. And tell us a little bit about the class that you're teaching here.
oh, they're super fun. They are here in the demonstration kitchen, and we start with a little aperitif outside on the patio, and then we move inside at 6 o'clock. We gather around 5:30. We come in at 6 o'clock and sit down and have an hour-and-a-half class. I usually have sometimes a little video I show about cheese making, or visits to a creamery. And I want people to have fun, but I also want them to learn something, to walk out knowing something else about cheese that they didn't know when they came in, whether it's how to be a better taster, how to be a better shopper, how to pair it better with wine,
How to set it up on a
how to
tray
make a
it
beautiful
look
platter.
pretty.
Yeah, so I just hope people will learn something in addition to have a good time.
Great. Well, this has been a lot of fun so far. I'm really excited about our last cheese. But so your next one is are you doing the
It's-
off the beaten path?
Yeah, Off the Beaten Path. It's the first Tuesday evening in November, and they would sign up by going to my website, janetfletcher.com.
Also on CellarPass.com.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. You can find it in both places. It's excellent. And all right, so this one's really pretty. It looks really kind
it's
of almost creamy-ish.
beautiful. And I know something from looking at it. I see this rind is kind of tan, almost pale salmon color. This is what's called a washed rind cheese, meaning that for the life, while it was being matured, it was repeatedly washed with brine, with salt water. And certain bacteria like that moist, salty surface, so they colonize the surface. We also have a little gray mold here and a little bit of white mold, but mostly it's about these bacteria, these kind of pale orange
really
colored
pretty.
bacteria, and they give the cheese a lot of flavor. This is a goat cheese. It's kind of like, have you ever had Taleggio, the cow's milk cheese from northern Italy?
No.
It's this is sort of a goat milk Taleggio. It's did you tasted
it's
it?
delicious.
Yeah. So that was the concept, also from northern Italy. All these cheeses are from northern Italy today. But this, and I can even see a little bit of glistening on the surface, which is salt from the
okay.
wash,
From the
from that
washing.
brine wash. Yeah. So I would definitely eat the rind on this cheese.
And
Definitely.
In a Fabulous World is saying the 1873 is an absolute beauty.
Oh,
She's
good.
loving this wine, from the color to the robust dark fruit, and she is sipping this wine
good.
very slowly.
I got a
Yeah,
good,
it's definitely one of the favorites here.
phenomenal cheese, I heard. Okay.
It has a little bit of that Valdosta.
Yes.
All right, we're going in for our last cheese bite.
From
Oh,
very near there.
Reminds me of that. A little less intense.
oh, that is really good.
You know your cheeses.
That's just nice. That's nice and creamy without being too squishy. Has a great flavor. I know, I'm technical. I know my stuff. Squishy.
It
Spongy.
is supple, I might call it. Salty.
It is salty, very
Quite
salty.
salty. That's from all that washing. And I usually put a cheese like this near the end of the tasting. If we had a blue cheese, it would come after that. But these washed rind cheeses can be quite stinky.
Yes.
So this one's pretty restrained as they go, but I'm going to want it towards the end of the tasting
Got
because
it.
it's
Still yum.
It's still young. This is definitely still on the young side. It can get a lot more squishy and supple. Squishy, was that your word?
That's my
Yeah,
word,
it's
squishy.
going to get squishier.
It's gonna get squishier. As it matures, it'll get a little
That's
squishy.
And even harder to pair with wine.
Squishy, and it will have an interesting aroma.
Some people say gym socks.
Gym socks. That's a good one. Yes, it's very
But
delicate.
it's not there yet, so it's still, I think, very approachable. And what do you think about wine?
It's a more difficult one for me, to be honest. I don't think it's going to be good with Cabernet. I think it's
More of
Cabernet might be a little
the
bit
more
too
of the
strong.
Pinot.
These are hard.
Yeah.
They're really hard.
I could see it.
Shake.
Too funny.
So you want even more.
In a Fabulous World's
intensity.
asking, compared to the previous 3 vintages, 2011 wasn't necessarily as stellar, some would say. How were the grapes selected for this wine to produce such an excellent wine?
I think the biggest reason is because we're pretty awesome.
I was gonna say, cause you had unicorns picking the grapes that year.
No, we were really strict as to how we make wine, and we're pretty picky. So no matter what the vintage is, we sacrificed quantity to make sure that we still have some really great quality wines coming out.
Well, I think your winemaking team is truly, you're awesome.
We are awesome.
You do, and you guys know your stuff.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of what 2011 saw as far as complexities in the vintage and the finished wine is that too many vineyard managers and winemakers were waiting for the perfect level of bricks. They weren't out sampling the grapes and going, you know what, this just tastes like it's ready. And sometimes you got to go with your gut. And I think that was what we really saw happening. You saw a lot of fruit hanging, getting, starting to get moldy, rotting on the vine, and that was terrible. And where there are the people that made 11s, there are a lot of great 11s out there. So I wouldn't necessarily judge the vintage of 2011 being like it was not so stellar. I think the not so stellar wines were the ones that were just going by a set recipe, like we're talking about your production cheese. It was a production wine that they're like, it has to hit so many bricks. And frankly, this was probably a little bit lower bricks wine than was expected, but it's delicious.
I'm sure. I think that people have to make the decision themselves. Don't let the wine spectator.
Oh my God! I almost sound like I knew what I was talking about that.
I was convinced.
You sold me for sure. I think that the critics are gonna, the critics have already kind of said what they had to say about the 2011 vintage. I think that people need to make their own choice, own decisions. There's going to be some great wines coming out if they aren't already out. It was just a different vintage.
It was.
No matter what you're growing, whatever agricultural product you're growing, whether it's oranges in Florida, it's all weather dependent, right? So they're going to make the best
Product they
possibly can. So we did a lot of things in the winery to make sure that we didn't risk quality. We have an optical sorter that we're able to use. We have
The
a great
Willy
winemaking
Wonka sorter. It's amazing. If you think of good egg, bad egg, that's exactly what the optical sorter is for grapes. It's fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really cool. Quick question for Janet: your best cheese combo for an adventurous version of mac and cheese?
Ooh, well, you could certainly slip some blue cheese into there.
Oh.
Whatever you've been using, add a little blue cheese, and it's going to give you a lot more pungency to your blend. I think it really, if you want to go in another direction, super sharp cheddar, like that 7-year we talked about, is going to give you a beautiful mac and cheese, and also all the Alpine cheeses from the Alps, like Comté and Gruyere, Appenzeller, are magnificent melting cheeses. They're really meant for that sort of use.
Absolutely. Oh, that'd be super fun. And don't forget to change your noodle. That also makes it exciting.
There's a good idea.
To get away from the Elba.
That could be a bumper sticker. Like
Change your noodle. Change your noodle. Get new noodles.
People could imagine all sorts of things.
You let your imagination go wild. And on that note,
I was just talking about mac and cheese.
on that note, we will leave you this afternoon. We've come to an end. We are sad to say goodbye, but tune in next week at 4 p.m. Pacific, and we will have more wine and more fun for you here on CellarPass TV. Thank you all for being here. Thank you so much for this experience. This was fun, and we will see you all very soon. Cheers.
Cheers.